The professional forest reforestation plan. So tell me what that means. Like, I guess it's types of plants that come in, or
A healthy, resilient forest, and that was done through using techniques that took into account the natural ecology and fostering natural regeneration, while also planting new trees to encourage the growth of species that could resist windstorms in the future. So in some areas where you may have logging, for example, you may plant a kind of a dense spread of conifer trees, whereas here the trees were planted in little patches to allow the natural regrowth of bushes and other plants, as well as the growth of planted trees, which for me was really important because it helps the natural increase in species diversity happen on the site. So in a natural forest, when a windstorm comes through, what happens is there's actually an increase in the number of plants that grow there and the number of animals that can use them because they eat berries or they feed on flowers. And so after a windstorm, there should be an increase in diversity.
so what plants are we seeing here?
The plants that grow up around the little trees that were planted and there's even some different plants on the slopes where it's actually an extra dry, rare ecosystem on the slopes of Prospect Point. So they planted some things like white pine and arbutus, which are only found in dry areas.
Okay. Now, and what we're just hearing a bird, I think, chirping out there. But what animal life are we seeing in bird life here?
Well, that bird we're hearing in the background is a great example because that's a Pacific wren, and those birds actually nest in the overturned root wads of trees that fall down during windstorms. So that just proves that this is an important part of our coastal ecology, and those little birds actually build their nests right in those root wads. And so these species are animals that have benefited from the windfall and maybe didn't have enough habitat before, and so they're doing quite well, as woodpeckers are doing really well, and all those species of birds that feed on berries and deciduous plants. So we have a lot of songbirds up here and migrant birds that come all the way from the tropical regions in the south all the way up here to use Stanley Park for habitat. So we've really seen a great diversity of birds in this area. Right, so on the night of the windstorm, what happened was at about 3 in the morning, hurricane force winds came roaring down English Bay and hit Stanley Park right here at Prospect Point. So this wind speed were around 120 kilometers an hour, and what happened is most of the trees in this area, 80% of the trees right here, just fell right down. And then the wind almost kind of just touched down in other areas of the park. So there was quite a few areas where the trees were completely flattened, but every area of the park was touched. I know walking around afterwards, every trail had trees down, and everything was affected by the storm that night.
Okay. Now you said earlier it was heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so walking around the park right after the storm, it was sad to see these huge 300 or 400 or 500-year-old cedar trees that we had used to educate the public through our programs, or had just come to know over the years, and see them lying on the ground. There was so much debris on the trails that you couldn't even walk down them, and at first it was sad, and it felt kind of still in the forest, and I think a lot of people that came down here after the storm had that same feeling.
Best thing that ever happened to the park.
Right, so it was really sad to see the storm happen, but we knew right away that this was something that is positive for the forest. So windstorms are a natural part of BC's coastal forest ecology. We need windstorms for our forests to be healthy. And so seeing all that down wood on the ground seemed sad, but to the animals this was actually a great thing. So even though some species here where they relied on these old trees may have to move to other areas, new species would be able to come in that actually use the cleared areas more, and there's more berry bushes and things to move in. So this is actually a really positive thing for the forest and a necessary part of the forest. As well, because the park board allowed all these different people in to have input on the process and to become involved in the management of the park, like UBC Faculty of Forestry and the Stanley Park Ecology Society and other forest professionals were involved, that opened up the process to be more forward-thinking and active. So in the end, the forest is better off from a management perspective, but it's also better off from an ecological perspective and also an awareness perspective in the public, and being able to provide education programs and teach people about this natural part of the ecology. So it's really the best thing that ever happened to Stanley Park.
Okay, just talk for a second about how initially a lot of workers down here, a lot of men with big machines and so on, and a lot of you naturalists down here, and sort of initially a little bit of a
was being able to work alongside the forestry crews that were out here in the park every day and the park forestry staff. At first it was a bit like a logging operation, and people had it in their mind that we got to get the wood out of here quick and we got to get this place cleaned up. But the biologists working alongside those people we were with them every day, and we started to show them the salamanders that we were moving out of the way, or point out the bird nests that were in certain areas we were trying to protect. And over time we actually developed a relationship where the forestry guys operating the machines and moving the lumber out of these sites would begin to tell us about cool wildlife trees that they found that we should protect, or wet areas that they wanted to avoid. And so we both gained an education. I learned a lot about forest practices, and they also learned a lot about the ecology of the forest that they work in every day. So it was a great beneficial relationship for all of us.